The rain poured heavily that evening, drumming against the roof of a small roadside inn. A tired old farmer walked in, his wife leaning gently against his arm for support. Their clothes were worn, their shoes muddy, and the years of hard labor had etched deep lines into their faces. They had traveled far from their little village, seeking shelter for the night, but their weary eyes revealed more than exhaustion. They carried the quiet dignity of people who had survived countless storms in life. As they stood at the counter, the manager glanced at them with disdain, his expression cold and dismissive. The farmer cleared his throat politely and asked if there were any rooms available. His voice was gentle, respectful, the kind that carried wisdom rather than pride. The manager barely looked up from his phone, smirking as his eyes swept over their shabby clothes. He offered them the cheapest room in the back, one that no guest had wanted in months. When the farmer nodded in acceptance, the manager leaned forward with a sneer and said, "Pay for the cheap room and leave quickly. This is no place for people like you." The words sliced the air like a cruel knife, but the farmer did not flinch. The wife's eyes watered, not because of the insult, but because she could feel the shame her husband silently carried. They had given their lives to the land, raising crops to feed others, and now they were treated as though they were less than human. She tugged at her husband's sleeve, suggesting they leave, but he placed a gentle hand over hers, calming her trembling. His eyes locked on the manager with a calm, unwavering gaze, and in that moment, something shifted in the room. Other guests sitting in the lobby had overheard the harsh words. Some lowered their heads, uncomfortable, while others pretended not to notice. The farmer slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cloth bag. It was old, patched in places, but the faint clinking inside hinted that it held more than what anyone expected. He placed it gently on the counter, the dull thud breaking the manager's smug expression. The farmer's voice was steady as he said, "My wife and I will pay for the cheap room, as you say, but remember this, money never buys respect, and respect is worth more than gold." The manager scoffed, brushing off the words with a roll of his eyes, yet curiosity made him open the cloth bag. His breath caught for a moment. Inside lay a handful of gold coins, the kind rarely seen in circulation, shining under the dull lights of the lobby. The farmer had quietly carried with him a lifetime of savings, earned through sweat, sacrifice, and an honest life. The room fell silent as the coins glittered, their silent brilliance challenging every ounce of arrogance the manager carried. Guests who had been ignoring the couple now stared in awe, whispering to one another. How could such a poor-looking farmer carry wealth that most city men only dreamed of? The farmer smiled faintly, noticing their astonishment, and continued softly, "We may look poor to your eyes, but we have enough to live, and enough to give. What we lack in appearance, we make up for in dignity. You mocked us because you saw rags, not souls." His words carried a weight heavier than any gold coin, and the manager shifted uneasily. The wife, holding her husband's hand, felt a surge of pride wash over her heart. She had watched him toil endlessly in the fields, never complaining, never asking for more than life gave them. He had given her a life of simplicity and honor, not riches, but love that was deeper than the roots of the oldest tree. She looked at him now with admiration, knowing that the real treasure he carried was not in the cloth bag, but in the strength of his character. The manager, still shaken, cleared his throat and muttered something about preparing a better room. But the farmer raised his hand and gently declined. "We do not need comfort purchased by pity or regret," he said firmly. "We asked for a place to rest, nothing more. A roof is enough for us. The rain will pass, and so will the sting of your words. But let this moment remind you that how you treat others speaks louder than what you own." Silence hung in the air, and even the rain outside seemed to soften its rhythm, as though listening. One of the younger guests in the lobby, moved by the farmer's words, stood up and walked over. He bowed slightly to the couple and offered them his own room, insisting that they deserved it more than anyone else. Others followed, offering food, blankets, and warm words. The farmer nodded gratefully, but once again he refused gently, repeating that he and his wife needed only the basics to rest their tired bodies. The wife, moved to tears, squeezed his hand as she whispered, "You always find a way to teach, even without trying." He smiled at her tenderly, brushing away her tears with his calloused fingers. "Life has taught me enough," he said softly. "If I cannot pass it on, then what have I lived for?" The love between them glowed brighter than the gold coins on the counter, a quiet testimony to the life they had built together. The manager, once full of arrogance, now stood speechless. Shame burned his cheeks as he realized the folly of his pride. He had mocked 2 souls who carried more wealth in their hearts than he could ever count in his register. For the first time in years, he bowed his head and murmured an apology, though the words felt heavy and unfamiliar on his tongue. The farmer accepted with a nod but offered no further judgment. That night, as the couple settled into the small room they had been given, the wife leaned against her husband and whispered, "Why didn't you tell them who you are?" The farmer chuckled softly, his voice gentle in the dark. "Because it doesn't matter who we are. It matters what we do. Let the coins remind him of our worth, but let our dignity remind him of his own." She smiled in the quiet, feeling the steady beat of his heart as her lullaby. The inn's guests carried the story with them long after the couple had left. They told others about the old farmer who had silenced arrogance not with anger, but with wisdom and humility. Some even said the manager changed after that night, treating travelers with kindness, no matter their appearance. Whether out of shame or genuine transformation, no one could say, but the lesson had been planted like a seed in his heart. The farmer and his wife returned to their village the next day, the fields welcoming them back like old friends. Life resumed its simple rhythm, plowing, sowing, harvesting, but something had shifted. Their story spread far and wide, reminding people that appearances deceive, and that true wealth often lies hidden beneath the surface of quiet souls. The villagers looked upon the couple with newfound admiration, though the farmer continued to live humbly, never boasting of the moment that had humbled a proud man. Years passed, and the gold coins remained tucked away in the same cloth bag, untouched and unspent. To the farmer, they were not a source of pride or power, but a symbol of the life he had built with integrity. He often said to his wife, "These coins remind me of the years we worked together. Every coin is a memory, every mark a story." She would nod and smile, her eyes sparkling with the same love she had felt since the day she married him. The story of the farmer and the manager became more than just an anecdote. It turned into a quiet legend, told at firesides and gatherings. Parents repeated it to their children, teaching them that humility could break the walls of pride, and that kindness was stronger than any insult. It became a reminder that wealth was not what jingled in a pocket, but what lived in a heart willing to forgive. On a quiet evening, as the sun set behind the horizon, the farmer sat with his wife under the old oak tree near their home. They held hands in silence, watching the colors fade into the sky. "Do you ever regret living this life?" she asked suddenly, her voice trembling with unspoken fears. He smiled and shook his head gently. "Not for a single day," he whispered. "Because wealth fades, gold loses its shine, but love and dignity, those never leave us." Her heart swelled with emotion, and tears glistened in her eyes. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of his words sink into her soul. They had faced poverty, endured hardship, and even humiliation, but their bond remained unbroken. The world had tested them, yet they stood together, stronger than ever. She closed her eyes, knowing that her husband's quiet wisdom would echo in her heart forever. And so, the story ended not with triumph or grandeur, but with a lesson etched deep into the hearts of all who heard it. Life may strip away comfort, pride, and even strength, but the core of dignity remains unshakable. The old farmer had proved that wealth means little without respect, and respect means little without love. In the end, the greatest treasure they carried was each other, and that was worth more than any room, cheap or grand. The rain that had once poured so harshly on their weary bodies became a symbol in their story, a reminder that storms pass, but character endures. The farmer's reply to the cruel manager lived on, echoing through generations as a simple yet profound truth: money never buys respect, and respect is worth more than gold. Those words became a beacon for many, guiding hearts toward humility, compassion, and the priceless value of treating every soul with dignity.